Well, good morning and happy Friday. I have been in some sort of pastoral ministry position since 1985, which is a long time. And during that time, I have probably spoke or written about humility 50 to 75 times. You might say that I'm a bit of an expert on the topic. I, of course, could not say that. And for the record, that line is a joke, except at some point you realize, well, he did talk about it 50 times, which may mean that he's actually not qualified to talk about it at all. Except, would you like to hear about humility from somebody who knows they're not qualified to talk about it? I mean, how do we even think about this? Just because somebody claims to be humble means they're unqualified. Somebody claims to be humble means they're unqualified, but just because somebody doesn't claim to be humble doesn't mean that they are humble. Both the arrogant and the humble probably know that they're not humble or think that they're not humble. I mean, look, this is a topic that is so confusing and the complications run in every direction. All I can promise you is I have not written a book called Humility and How I Achieved It. We're picking up the topic today because, for three reasons. First of all, because Paul actually is demonstrating some humility here in Philippians chapter 3. Although it doesn't sound like it, you have to look for it. I mean, he says, look, if anyone else thinks they're good, if anyone thinks that they earned God's favor, I did more than you did, right? If anyone else has mind to put confidence in the flesh, I have more. Circumcised on the 8th day, the nation of Israel, the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, as to law, a Pharisee, as to zeal, a persecutor of the church, as to righteousness which is in the law, found blameless. So he's giving his resume as a Jewish Pharisee and claiming, I was better than anyone else. So it doesn't sound like humility, except he's doing all this to say, I was more profoundly wrong than anyone else, zealously wrong, headed in the wrong direction. And so we're going to look at humility for the next few days because Paul brings it up here. Secondly, we're going to look at humility because we can always use more. This is a relatively new thing, not super new. It's a couple thousand years old. But before that, the Greeks and the Romans thought humility was weakness. It was all about being strong and honor and never admitting to any kind of weakness or doubt. Jesus changed all that. And now humility is esteemed. And so, Jim Collins in his book, Good to Great, will talk about the humility of the great leaders and the humility of the great companies. So we need more. Finally, the third reason we're going to talk about it is because this has been a humbling moment for many. Lots of people have lost their jobs or are feeling less secure or have lost some financial wherewithal, and there's a sense of fragility to their life. And I know that as a pastor, when that happens, being humbled and humility are not the same thing, but when we're humbled, that's an opportunity, that's an inflection point. Some people go in the right direction, and some people go in the wrong direction. So we're looking at humility, which, just for the record, is not trying to hide our talents. Humility is not saying you're not good at something that you're good at. Humility is not low self-esteem. Actually, it's a very self-absorbed thing. Loving yourself and hating yourself are not opposites. They're related. They're being self-referential, and the goal is to be self-forgetful. I like this definition that comes out of a book called Humilitas, written by John Dickerson. And he's an ancient historian. He's the one that was part of a team that sort of tried to figure out why the value of humility changed so profoundly in ancient history. And all the ancient historians came back and said it was Jesus who changed it. And it wasn't his teaching on humility as much as it was who he was. And that just changed their thinking about everything. But Dickerson says that humility is the noble choice to forgo status, to deploy your resources, or to use your influence for the good of others before yourself. Humility is the noble choice to forgo your status, deploy your resources, or to use your influence for the good of someone else ahead of yourself. We'll pick up humility next week, but think about it this weekend. How can you climb down today? The way up is down if we're going to be serious about Jesus.